Ana Walshe was a loving wife and mother of 3 young children. On New Year's Day in 2023, she had a work emergency and had to suddenly leave, but was never seen again. After police find suspicious CCTV footage and disturbing Google searches, they realised Ana never left the family home that night, but instead met a terrible fate. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Partners in Crime. My name is Poppy.
And I'm Roger.
Just remember to like and subscribe. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's go. This case follows a family consisting of Brian, Ana, and their 3 children, aged 2, 4, and 6 years old, who live in Cohasset, Massachusetts, in the US. Brian is 47 years old, and according to his LinkedIn page, he is the CFO and CEO of multiple companies.
Okay.
He's an only child, but is estranged from his wealthy father, who is a renowned neurologist in Boston. But he is still in contact with his mum, but they are separated.
Right.
Ana Walshe, her maiden name is Ljubičić, was originally from Serbia, but emigrated to the US in 2005 at 22 years old.
Okay.
She started working in the hospitality industry, mostly in hotels. This is actually how she met her husband, Brian, while she was working at the Wheatley Hotel in Lenox, Massachusetts, as a reservations manager in 2008. She later went on to earning a master's in hospitality management at Cornell University. They got married in 2015 and they had a very intimate ceremony where none of Brian's family attended.
Okay.
Ana was a highly independent and ambitious woman who wanted to succeed in life. In 2010, she began working her way up the corporate ladder, getting promoted twice in 3 years, then moving to a different line of work, real estate, where she flourished and was continuously stepping up the ladder in terms of job role and pay. Then in 2022, she finally landed a new job, becoming the regional general manager at Tishman Speyer, which is a high-end real estate firm in Washington, D.C. Not only that, but she also has 4 rental properties in Massachusetts, Maryland, and Washington.
Wow. Living the American dream, really.
So it's safe to say she was doing really well for herself, selling $1 million homes and also from her own rental properties.
Yeah.
So because her new job resides in Washington, Ana and Brian had made a plan where she would stay in Washington during the week and fly back home for the weekend every week. Yeah, it is over 400 miles to travel back and forth. But when you have young children, I suppose you're going to kind of make that effort and the means
to be able to do it. Yeah, exactly.
Ana bought a $1.3 million townhouse in the affluent neighborhood of Chevy Chase, Washington. And the idea was that when the time was right, Brian and the kids would move to Washington and they would live there permanently. So, I mean, she's getting a $1.3 million house, you know what I mean? So, after many years of marriage in 2022, Ana and Brian were spending New Year's Eve at home together, and they invited their friend round called Jem. I don't know how to say the surname. Jem Mulu or Mutlu or... I'm so sorry, I don't know how to say it. Who arrived around 8 p.m. for dinner and then left around 1 a.m. on New Year's Day. Ana had just flown home on the 30th of December from Washington and was due to fly back again on the 3rd, so she could spend a few days at home with her family before heading back to her work. And shortly after Jem left, they also just went to bed. You know, it was 1 a.m. Fast forward to the 4th of January 2023, Cohasset police received a call from someone at Tishman Speyer, the company that Ana works for, reporting that she never showed up to work, which was very unusual. And she wasn't answering her phone, which was even more unusual. Ana was always kind of highly dependable, so her colleagues were seriously concerned and asked the police for a wellness check in her hometown.
Yeah.
Police officers show up to the home Ana shares with Brian and they don't find her there. Brian explains how he hasn't seen her since the early hours of January the 1st, 2023. He explains how she had a work emergency. She got ready and kissed him goodbye and told him just to go back to sleep. She took either an Uber or a Lyft to the airport, like one of those ride share companies. He said this was between 4 and 6 a.m. He wasn't sure. Officers asked what he had been doing over the past few days. Because he hadn't reported her missing.
Right.
And he explains, on January the 1st, he got up at 7 to make breakfast for their 3 boys. In the afternoon, a babysitter arrived around 3 p.m. He leaves to see his mother in Swampscott, which is about an hour and a half car journey. Brian goes on to say he got lost driving to his mother's house, and it takes him about 20 to 30 minutes longer than usual to get there. He said he didn't use his GPS because he was missing his cell phone, telling officers that one of their children must have taken the phone and that it wasn't found until the next day, hence why he got lost.
Mm-hmm.
While in Swampscott, he ran errands for his mother, and he went to CVS and Whole Foods, and he stayed at his mum's house only for around 15 minutes. I guess he was just going to help her out with some bits.
Right.
He then returned home at 8 p.m.
Okay.
He took one of his children for ice cream at a juice bar in Norwell on the 2nd of January, while the babysitter watched the 2 other kids. But that was kind of it. On the 2nd, he just kind of hung out at home.
Yeah.
Brian explained how it was normal for him to not hear from his wife for a few days at a time due to her busy schedule. He had no reason to be concerned from her silence. But because Anna never showed up to work and he hadn't heard from her, he filed a missing persons report, obviously. When officers were leaving the home on the 4th of January, they had a quick peek in the cars at the property, and they noticed that Brian's vehicle had the back seats down and a plastic liner in the back of the car.
Ooh.
On the 5th of January, officers returned to the Walshe home and noticed that the plastic liner was gone from Brian's vehicle, and the carpet of the car showed fresh vacuum streaks. When officers asked Brian about this, he simply said he threw the liner in the bin. Cohasset police get the word out on social media that they are looking for help from the public to find Anna. They say she was last seen early in the morning of New Year's Day and speaks with an Eastern European accent. Police spoke with the man who last saw Anna alive on New Year's Eve, Jem. He described the night at the Walshes' home as festive and said Brian made an elaborate meal. He said, "We hugged and celebrated and we toasted, just what you do over New Year's. There was a lot of looking forward to the new year. There was no indication of anything other than celebrating the new year. All the problems were on hold." He explained how on the 4th of January, Brian called him to let him know Anna was missing. Jem went on to say, "She was texting with friends. She was sitting next to me at the bar stool at their kitchen. There was absolutely no indication that any modicum of tragedy, of disappearance, or anything else could have happened that night." On the 6th of January, police start searching the woods near Route 3A, about a mile from Anna's home, but they found nothing. On the 7th of January, a breakthrough finally happened when the Cohasset police received an email which stated, "We have the so-named Ana Walshe with us here. We had a deal worth $127,000. She messed up. We have her here with us, and if she doesn't pay the money, then she'll never be back. And we know that the police and the FBI are involved. Good luck finding us."
Dubious.
It was sent from the Gmail account of Richard Walker 9984. Officers initially found this email suspicious, as it didn't match the kind of normal ransom emails/notes they've received in the past. The emailer didn't put forth a timeline to respond to the demand, and they also didn't include any kind of contact information to go further with this ransom. Searches in nearby streams and pools were made. They used canine units and the state police air wing, but they still found nothing. And the search, the ground search for Anna that evening ended until they have any kind of further reason to be looking.
Okay.
And woods and stuff like that. At least 6 investigators are tasked with driving to the North Shore area of Massachusetts and watching surveillance video to try and verify Brian's timeline of events. As he said, he went to a few places.
Yeah.
On the 8th of January, police execute a search warrant for Anna and Brian's home. Investigators are seen removing boxes of evidence from inside the house, while others had shovels in hand. And they found some interesting items when looking in the basement. They had found a blood stain and a bloody, damaged knife.
Ooh.
Brian is immediately arrested, but charged with misleading the investigation, as Anna has now been missing for 1 week.
Yeah, okay.
January the 9th, Brian Walshe was arraigned in court and pleaded not guilty to a charge of misleading police. Lynn Beeland, the prosecutor, said investigators had found no evidence of Ana Walshe taking a ride share from the couple's home on the 1st of January. She said his statements to police caused a delay in the investigation. The judge set bail at $500,000 cash and set the next hearing for the 9th of February. Prosecutors released the affidavit in support of a criminal complaint that lays out Brian's timeline of the prior week. An affidavit is a sworn statement that is documented in writing. The affiant must swear that the facts contained in it are true and correct. And once signed, it holds the force of law and binds the individual to the truthfulness of the information that they have provided. The affidavit describes Brian Walshe's statements to the police as a clear attempt to mislead and delay investigators. The affidavit outlines several trips he made that were not requested and approved beforehand, and that they may represent violations of terms of his probation.
His probation?
Yeah, so he was on probation.
So we're learning something new about Brian?
Yes. It was for a crime he had committed a number of years before this incident. He's on house arrest.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, him travelling to his mother's house, going to CVS, Whole Foods, going for ice cream.
It's all a break of his
Yeah, because he didn't ask if he... He didn't say, hey, I'm doing this. Is that cool?
Yeah, right.
Yes, no.
Yeah.
So let's quickly go back to 2016, 7 years before today's case. A renowned art dealer, considered one of the top Andy Warhol dealers in the US, Ron Rivlin, found 2 Andy Warhol paintings on eBay. Ron described how the images showed that they were authenticated by Andy Warhol's estate and were from the 1978 series of untitled abstract canvas paintings known as Shadows, and were being sold for $80,000. The owner of these paintings was Brian Walshe. As a seasoned Andy Warhol art dealer, Ron knew these were legit and was happy to pay for them. Brian didn't want the transaction to go through eBay, so requested they meet face-to-face to exchange. Ron sent his assistant with an $80,000 cashier's check, and they both signed a contract stating Ron had 3 days to return the paintings in order to get a full refund if he wasn't happy for whatever reason.
Yeah.
After close inspection, Ron Rivlin quickly realised that these paintings were fake. Shock. There wasn't the authentication stamp as previously shown, and the canvas looked brand new, not 40 odd years old.
Yeah.
It turns out Brian had a friend in South Korea who had the real Andy Warhol paintings. He took the paintings, telling his friend he could sell them for a great price, but instead he took pictures of them with the authentication stamp, etc., and put them up on eBay, only to buy replicas of the paintings that he then gave to Ron Rivlin, so he could then continue this scam multiple times to multiple people.
Yeah. Cheeky bastard.
Yeah, so that's how he managed to dupe the professional art dealer.
Right.
His friend tried to contact him about the paintings, whether he'd sold them or not, but Brian never got back to him, and he was never compensated either for his real Andy Warhol paintings. This was only one of the victims. Like I said, there was others too.
Yeah.
I couldn't find as much detail on them as much as this one, but apparently another victim of this fraud sent him $140,000 for the paintings, which he spent on a brand new 2015 Maserati for Anna, and took her shopping in Prada in France. This ultimately led to an FBI investigation where Brian was finally arrested in 2018. Less than a year after marrying Anna, he was arrested. It turned out Brian actually used Anna's eBay account when committing the crimes. So she got thrown into the mess of it all too.
Right.
Luckily, she was found to have no kind of part in this. And Brian was charged with wire fraud, interstate transportation for a scheme to defraud, possession of converted goods, and unlawful monetary transaction in November 2018. This was said by the prosecution on the case. The crime was devious, complicated, and planned. He travelled to multiple countries. He enlisted multiple artists to prepare fake paintings with multiple lies. He involved private galleries, auction houses, and even eBay in his scheme. He manipulated and stole from people who trusted him, welcomed him into their homes, and considered him a close friend. He crafted stories and lies about the paintings to make the fraudulent sales believable. Walshe proved so successful, in fact, that the FBI has not yet recovered the artwork, despite an investigation of several years and the defendant's guilty pleas, because he does end up pleading guilty. So they still haven't found the original artwork.
Right, blimey.
That he's
Crazy.
took from his friend.
Yeah,
They don't know where it is. In April 2021, Brian Walshe pleaded guilty to 3 of the 4 counts in exchange for a recommended sentence of incarceration, supervised release, fines, restitution, and forfeiture. He also agreed to either return the artworks or pay for them. As part of pre-sentencing probation, Brian Walshe was placed on monitoring and house arrest. He can request to leave home but must detail the specific locations, times, and reasons, which is how he broke his probation due to the trips to his mum's house, etc.
Yeah.
He didn't tell his probation worker. So whilst the current case that we're talking about is going on, he's still on probation from another that hasn't resolved yet.
No.
He hasn't been sentenced. He hasn't,
Right.
He hasn't been found guilty or not guilty of it yet. This is also why Anna was able to work away 5 days a week, because Brian was on house arrest. He couldn't work. So he had basically all the time to look after the young children.
Right. Sure.
So that basically just gives an insight into what kind of person Brian is. So back to the case. Investigators were looking into Brian's timeline he gave them, double checking CCTV, etc. of the places he mentioned in order to corroborate his story. Turns out, on the 1st of January, when he went to Whole Foods and CVS and Swampscott for his mum, that didn't happen. They could not find his car or him entering either shop on CCTV at the times that he said. Another lie he told was that he had lost his phone. Investigators found, using cell phone data, that it was actually just plugged in at home all day, yet his oldest son's phone did not stay at home. The phone data showed the oldest child's device had travelled to 2 shops. Surveillance video showed Brian Walshe walking into those same stores by himself.
Okay.
Then around 5:30 p.m, surveillance showed Brian and his vehicle going to a dumpster in the parking lot of a liquor store and disposing of bin bags before returning to his car. After that, cell phone data shows the device travelled to the dumpster at an apartment building where Brian's mother lived. The phone then travelled to Lowe's store, which is a home improvements shop, kind of like B&Q if you're from the UK, where Brian is also seen on surveillance footage. He purchased 5 5-gallon buckets, a hacksaw, 48 terry cloth towels, a full coverage suit, 200 disposable rags, trash bags, and cleaning products. So, not suspicious at all. The phone then travels to a CVS store where Brian was also seen on surveillance, purchasing 13 different types of hydrogen peroxide. So, if you didn't think he was guilty before, you definitely will now. And if you're still not sure, investigators found some very disturbing Google searches made on Brian's oldest son's iPad.
Right.
Too. Okay, so starting at 4:55 a.m. on January the 1st. How long before a body starts to smell?
Okay.
Then at 4:58 a.m., how to stop a body from decomposing. Then 22 minutes later, how to embalm a body. At 5:47 a.m., 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to. At 6:25 a.m., how long for someone to be missing to inherit. At 6:34 a.m., can you throw away body parts? At 9:29 a.m., so 3 hours later, what does formaldehyde do? At 9:34 a.m., how long does DNA last? At 9:59 a.m., can identification be made on partial remains? And then a couple of hours later, at 11:34 a.m., dismemberment and the best ways to dispose of a body. At 11:44 a.m., how to clean blood from wooden floor. At 11:56 a.m., luminol to detect blood. And then a couple of hours later, at 1:08 p.m., what happens when you put body parts in ammonia? And then finally, at 1:21 p.m, is it better to throw crime scene clothes away or wash them? On the 2nd of January, more searches were found. Hacksaw, best tool to dismember. Can you be charged with murder without a body? And can you identify a body with broken teeth? It became pretty clear to investigators this guy might have killed Anna, dismembered her body, and disposed of her body parts. Allegedly.
Sounds about right.
Later, on January the 3rd, he did take one of his sons to get ice cream. That was true. But he seemed to miss out what else he did that day. According to surveillance video, Brian travelled to a Home Depot in Rockland, which is about 27 minutes away, wearing a surgical mask and gloves, and made a cash purchase. There, Brian bought $450 worth of cleaning supplies, including mops, a bucket, tarps, goggles, a hatchet, and baking soda. Then on the 3rd of January, more Google searches were found. He hadn't Googled enough. What happens to hair on a dead body? What is the rate of decomposition of a body found in a plastic bag compared to on a surface in the woods? And can baking soda mask or make a body smell good? Cell phone data tracked Brian's whereabouts to an apartment complex in Abington at 4:27 p.m, 33 minutes away from his house. Surveillance video shows he exited his car with a heavy garbage bag and put it into the dumpster. At 4:48 p.m, 20 minutes later, he travelled to another apartment complex in the same town. And at 5:10 p.m, he went to an apartment complex in a different town where he again discarded items in the dumpsters. These garbage bags were already taken away by the time police tracked them down. However, officers went to nearby rubbish facility in Peabody, where they in fact managed to find some evidence in these bags.
Oh, okay.
Police confirmed Anna never boarded her flight on the 1st or the 3rd of January and could never verify if she even got into the rideshare service. In fact, police said Anna's cell phone pinged in the area of the house in Cohasset on January the 1st and 2nd.
Right, okay.
On the 4th of January, which is finally the day that Anna is mentioned to the police about possibly being missing, Brian visited Home Goods and TJ Maxx to buy towels and bath mats, and visited Lowe's to buy squeegees and a trash can. It was revealed how back in 2014, Ana Walshe called police on Brian for allegedly threatening to kill her and her friend, but the case was closed when she refused to cooperate, according to a police report. And I'm just so intrigued what happened for her to call the police on him. Obviously, that was before they were married. You know, was there a kind of domestic abuse situation happening? You know, it's possible. And remember the plastic line that officers saw in the back of his car that Brian later removed?
Yeah.
Well, when the car was inspected and analysed, there was blood found in the back of his car. On the 5th of January, cell phone data showed Brian went to Swampscott, where his mum lives, and travelled to the corner of the apartment complex where there is the dumpster. 10 trash bags that originated from this dumpster contained bloodstains, cleaning materials, a hacksaw, a hatchet, a purse, and boots worn by Anna and her COVID-19 vaccination card. But it wasn't until the 17th of January that Brian Walshe was finally charged with murder and disinterring of a body without authority. Prosecutor Beeland accused him of dismembering his wife and disposing of her remains in dumpsters. She also laid out some of the evidence that led to the charges, including the discovery of Ana Walshe's belongings and blood in the garbage and Brian Walshe's Google searches. A not guilty plea was entered on Brian Walshe's behalf. I mean, seriously. His attorney, Tracy Minor, issued a statement suggesting that evidence against him was not strong. She said, "In my experience, the prosecution leaks so-called evidence to the press before they provide it to me. It means their case isn't that strong. When they have a strong case, they give me everything as soon as possible. We shall see what they have and what evidence is admissible in court, where the case will ultimately be decided." And so Brian is held there without bail at this point. On March 30th, Brian was indicted by a grand jury on charges of murder, misleading investigators, and improperly conveying a human body, which that sounds like the dismembering and disposing of. The indictment moves the case from Quincy District Court to Norfolk County Superior Court due to it being a major felony crime. April the 27th, Brian was arraigned in Norfolk County Superior Court and still pleaded not guilty to the charges. This is where prosecutors laid out a possible motive behind the alleged murder of Anna. They said Ana Walshe had taken out approximately $2.7 million in life insurance on herself, where Brian Walshe is the sole beneficiary. Tracy Minor countered the prosecution's notion that Brian was trying to cash in on his wife's life insurance policies. She said there is no evidence Mr. Walshe was the least bit needing of money. Yeah, and just notice that his mother is wealthy, like he is in no need of money. Which is true, like I've stated, Brian does come from a wealthy family.
Yeah.
However, that doesn't mean he himself is technically wealthy.
No.
However, another story from Brian's past would lead you to possibly think otherwise. But this will clearly cement in your minds how much of a dickhead this guy is.
Didn't you say he was like a CFO, though, of like a company or something?
Yeah, that's a lie.
Okay.
It's all a lie.
Carry on.
Around 2007, so we're going back in time again, Brian Walshe and his father, Dr. Thomas Walshe, were in contact with each other and were even considered close. I believe they, in fact, Brian lived with his dad still, very much in his pocket. Friends of Thomas said they had never seen them argue or raise their voices to each other. Brian had a lot of mental health problems as a young man and spent a lot of time at Austin Riggs Center, psychiatric hospital, as a long-term patient, and was apparently, throughout Brian's troubles, Thomas's friend describes Thomas as, Tom never judged him, never belittled him, never expressed anger to him about where Brian was in his life. He was always supportive, everything was as good as it could be, given these setbacks. And yet underneath, it was this unbelievable treachery and complete disregard for his father. And what his friend is referring to is that allegedly Brian disappeared with a cheque for over $800,000 of his father's money after he refinanced his home. But Thomas was overwhelmingly concerned for his child more than the money.
Right.
Thomas's friend describes, keep in mind, Tom is waiting for a FedEx with the cheque the next day, and it didn't come. And he calls Brian, and Brian is nowhere to be found. And that lasted more than 10 years. His father was beside himself. What happened to my son? Did he get kidnapped, murdered? Did he have a gambling problem I didn't know about? Apparently Thomas was adamant that Brian wouldn't have stolen the money. He was in complete denial. The friend continued. Then it started creeping into Tom's mind. Could this possibly be? It took a couple of years, but through the use of a private investigator, they tracked down Brian, who was living with a friend in Maine. It wasn't like he asked his dad for money and his dad said no. He asked his dad for money and his dad always said yes. But he didn't want the money his dad gave him. He wanted double. And the saddest part of it all was how detrimental this was to his dad. Thomas's home went into foreclosure, his credit was destroyed, and he had to put off his retirement to stay afloat financially whilst being completely heartbroken that his only child has done this to him. But that wasn't it. After Thomas never heard from his son again, he made his nephew the executive of his estate. And in September 2018, Dr. Thomas Walsh died whilst travelling in India. Brian was informed of his father's death and didn't tell a soul. Instead, he broke into his father's home, found the will, his father's will, and destroyed it before anyone could see it. He then completely trashed the house and stole items such as jewellery, a car, and original Salvador Dali artwork that he then sold. Luckily, a friend of Thomas had gone round before Brian and actually took a photo of the will. Therefore, he was able to prove that the will actually said, quote, "I hereby bequeath Brian R. Walsh my best wishes and nothing else from my estate." End quote. So good. Love that. Thomas Walsh had the sense to completely cut Brian out of his will, which is probably why Brian then trashed the house out of anger.
Right. Maybe. Unless he was just trying to make it look like a robbery and just wanted to nick a bunch of stuff.
Possibly. But I don't know if he knew he was out of the will.
Yeah, right. He probably thought he was still in it.
Yeah. He's an idiot. He tried to also sell a beach house that his father owned. He tried to sell it for like 200k over the asking price, and the house didn't even technically belong to him. Luckily, through the court system, he was stopped. However, this case about the will and everything like that was dropped, and Brian will not face charges for this.
Right.
But this just shows he stops at nothing to get money. Like, he betrayed his own dad and abandoned him for over a decade. Could he have done the same thing to his wife, like just for money? In April, on the hacksaw detectives found in a dumpster near Brian's mum's house, after analysis, it was found to have a bone fragment on it. This was huge and was sent straight off for testing. Court documents revealed investigators found rugs that appeared to be from Anna and Brian's living room and kitchen that contained red-brown staining and numerous items identical to Brian's alleged purchases he had made at Lowe's and Home Depot. It was also revealed that Brian thought Anna was having an affair, and that after police searched Anna's phone, they confirmed this was in fact true. She had been having an affair with a man in Washington. She even spent Thanksgiving just a month before she was murdered with this guy in Dublin, in Ireland. And then Brian's attorney admitted his mother hired a private investigator to trail Anna in Washington because she suspected she was having an affair. So she, however, claimed that Brian had nothing to do with it and had no reason to suspect his wife of infidelity until she vanished. Anna had made it clear to friends that she was planning on leaving Brian. And she was even crying at a meal over her situation days before she disappeared. Brian's pre-trial hearing was rescheduled from the 23rd of August to the 2nd of November 2023, as both prosecutors and defence are expecting to have DNA results from an independent laboratory in approximately 2 weeks. So this put the whole trial on hold, just waiting for the precious DNA evidence to come back. Boston legal analyst Michael Coyne said, "DNA evidence is especially important because investigators never found Ana Walshe's body. Not only do prosecutors have to prove that he murdered his wife, they also have to prove that she's dead. A bone fragment in and of itself doesn't prove death necessarily. It proves she may have been injured. But they're trying to prove first-degree murder." However, it was all postponed again until January 23rd, 2024. And then an annoying thing happened. Yeah. Tracy Minor, Brian Walsh's private attorney, filed a motion to withdraw from the case.
Okay.
She didn't say in the hearing why she was withdrawing, but she understood that Brian was now indignant, meaning he cannot pay for a private lawyer anymore.
Right, I see.
Therefore, Judge Beverly Canone approved a court-appointed lawyer. With hundreds of pages of testimony and evidence for the new defence attorney to catch up on, the two sides agreed on the 4th of March as the next court date in the case. But that's it. That is the case up to date as of the 30th of January.
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty obvious this despicable man is guilty. From what I researched about the guy, he thought he was the shit.
Right.
He thought he was so clever and superior, especially when he was constantly being funded by his father. You know, he never had to work a day in his life and could just live a life of luxury. He was used to throwing dinner parties costing up to $20,000 and told people he gained his money from creating a software program in college, which, as we know, is a complete lie. In fact, he was a manipulative, deceitful, lazy idiot who was jealous of his wife's massive success. She was rising up the ranks, earning the big bucks, buying properties, etc. Where he was at his lowest, stuck at home with absolutely no prospects, no money and no life, you know, on probation. He knew about her affair and probably put two and two together that she was going to leave him and then he would be left with nothing. So, you know, did he become desperate? Who knows? But that's my theory anyway of, you know, motive. But that's it. You know, as always, you know, we'll update you later on the case when the trial starts, hopefully in March, like they're saying.
Yeah.
Remember to like and subscribe and leave us comments with what you think of this case and just how much of a dickhead Brian Walsh is. That would be great. And we'll see you next time.